Okay. This is MDE 61 support course for pre-calculus. Okay. Many people in this course are in my pre-calculus. There are several people who are in other pre-calculus courses. So we're going to tailor the pace of the course to accommodate both my course and the other. Now, it's easy to accommodate my pre-calculus course because the open math assignments start a little bit later than they do in the distance section or some of the other sections, okay? But what we want to do in the whole approach of this course is we try to give you a light version of what you're going to see later in pre-calculus. So at the beginning of the course, we really kind of hustle. So you get used to the idea that you're going to be doing a fairly heavy amount of work in this course in the first couple of weeks. Then it slacks off. And then everybody's doing okay, and depending on the way the class is going and so forth and how people are doing, typically that eases off at the end of the semester, so you can concentrate on getting your exams done. So this course is a little bit heavily loaded at the beginning of the semester. By the end of the semester, you'll have seen everything and we can relax a little bit. Does that make sense? Okay, well, hopefully it does. Now, I'm addressing the people who are here. There aren't that many people in the class, and about half the class is here. And because of the change in schedule, we're on a 2-hour delay that might have messed people up with their work schedules or whatever. And people aren't here. Also, this section, this in-class section, is collapsed with the distance section. So I sometimes address the distance students. Okay. If you're a distance student, you need to be doing what we're doing here. Okay. You need to be watching these videos. You need to stay up. A little bit about the syllabus. We're on short term today. I want to get into some other stuff. I don't want to take the time to read the syllabus to you. Expect you to read it. We'll go over it Tuesday when we have a little more time. Okay, but just the high points. Number one, there are 2 ways to pass this course. One way is you pass your pre-calculus course. Okay, if you pass your pre-calculus course, you automatically pass this course. The other is you pass tests in this course. It's possible to pass this course without passing pre-calculus. And if you pass this course but don't pass pre-calculus, that means that in my judgment and in the judgment of the course that I've set up, you know enough to then give pre-calculus another try without having to take this course as well. Okay. And since the failure rate in pre-calculus is pretty high, that's something you want to keep in mind. Now, hopefully nobody fails pre-calculus. Last semester, 75% of the people in this class passed pre-calculus. Okay. I think it might have been a B and a couple of, about 2 C's to 1 B. Nobody really made an A in the pre-calculus. Okay. Except one person who just knocked the top off of it. Okay. Now that's in my section. In other sections, there was one person who simply stopped coming, and I don't think they made it through the pre-calculus. Okay, so there's probably things going on. Point is, if you stick with this course and do everything that we ask you to do in this course, there's a much higher probability that you'll pass pre-calculus, and a much higher probability that even if you would ordinarily have passed pre-calculus, you're going to pass it with a better grade. Okay, it's going to make it easier to pass pre-calculus. Now, unfortunately, we find that a lot of times the people who take this course aren't the people who need it the most. Okay, there are 2 ways people get into this course. They have to choose to take this course. Okay. People are allowed to take pre-calculus without taking this course. Okay, and 70% of the students in pre-calculus should be taking this course. Okay, so what you have is you have people who really aren't very confident in their math and they come into this course, and that's probably a good decision. Then you have people that have really high standards for themselves and feel like they don't quite know it well enough, even though maybe they do, and they come into this course. Well, it works for both classes of students. If you have the basic algebra and intermediate algebra knowledge, but you're rusty on it and need some help getting through the pre-calculus class, and this class is designed for you. Okay. If you know it but don't know it as well as you maybe could, this class will help you put a finer edge on it, and you're probably going to make a higher grade. Okay. The only person who's made an A, I have a lot of people have made B's and good C's and decent grades in the pre-calculus. But the only people who've made A's in my pre-calculus are people who've taken the MDE 60 or MDE 61 course. And it just comes down to the fact that you got to know some algebra to do pre-calculus. And it gets in your way if you don't. So anyhow, that's kind of where this course is. It's here to give you the skills and the pre-knowledge that you need to do well in your pre-calculus, to at least pass it and hopefully to do very well. Okay. Again, the students who are making the highest grades in pre-calculus are the ones that have enrolled in this course. Now, there are plenty of students out there who, if they work hard, can ace pre-calculus. Okay, and if you're one of them, you probably don't need this course. Just up to you to work hard enough to make it. Okay. Now we're going to do a little bit of diagnostic stuff today. I'm going to give you some problems to do just to see how your arithmetic is, how your elementary algebra is, and how, a little bit about how your intermediate algebra is at this point. It gives me more information on how to approach the course for this class. Every class is different. So I need to get that information. How many of you are in my pre-calculus class? You're okay. You have my sympathy, but welcome. Okay, that's good. We're going to do some interesting stuff in my pre-calculus class, and you'll see that.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, have somebody on the phone made some noise, but it reminds me that when you come in, don't walk in front of the camera and don't say anything, because if you can be identified, we got to crash the video. And I don't get to remake videos. I don't have time. Okay. And I don't have time to edit them. I don't have good editing tools. Have fair editing tools, and sometimes I can do a little of that. If there's one interruption in a class, I can usually post. Videos, incidentally, for the class are always posted on YouTube, usually the day later in the day. Okay. Now, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I got a heavier teaching schedule than most. So sometimes, especially on Thursdays, it might be a day late. But I make effort to get the videos posted as quickly as possible. And for distance students, yes, we're going to have the videos because this class also addresses distance students. We do the same stuff. Okay, so I've gone over a little bit about what it takes to pass the course, which is basically either you pass pre-calculus, in case you automatically pass this course, or you pass this course even if you don't pass pre-calculus, which means the tests in this course are kind of optional, but you really ought to take them to see if you can pass them, because if you happen not to pass pre-calculus, then when you take pre-calculus again, the recommendation, if you pass this course, we just take pre-calculus. You don't need this course anymore. So make sure we understand that. Okay, now somebody just walked in. So attendance is up to 75% in this class, considering that we're on snow delay and some places You know, my wife has to get out today. I dug her car out yesterday. It took a while. A fair amount of snow. But of course, the snow plow piles everything right in front of our cars. Now, we've only got 20 feet to go to get out. But it's easy to spin back there. So we've only got 20 feet to get out. And some of it's solid ice. I could have taken a mattock and broken it up, but you damage the road surface. So I just showed her how to get the thing going, get a little momentum, hope nothing's coming either way, and get out on the road. And if something's coming, you have good reflexes. Now, my point is, not my situation, which is really pretty easy. It's right in town. And once you're on the road, you're good. It's that some people have a much more difficult situation. You know, they have a 100-foot ice-covered driveway that's uphill both ways. And some of those people might not be here. Also, since we're on delay, work schedules and so forth. So if you're not here, you better be watching this video. You'll get an email about that shortly. Well, by the end of the day, this afternoon, almost certainly. Okay, well. Again, whether you pass this course or not, there are actually two ways. If you don't pass pre-calculus, you pass the tests or somehow, and there probably is no way other than passing the test. But if I see clearly that you have the skills to succeed in pre-calculus, then I'm going to take the liberty to be able to make that judgment and pass you even if you haven't taken tests. But it's going to be very difficult to convince me if you don't take the tests. Okay, it's got to be really obvious from the work I see, because I'm going to see you do a lot of work. Okay, now in class, we're going to start doing it. In class, I'm going to have you do some work. Okay, I'm going to give you a problem to do, see if you can do it. Now, in a normal class, that problem will be just like some of the problems you saw on the homework. Okay, another thing I've got to address. Okay, people in this class, in the distance class especially, where I don't see them, there were a lot of people who had about 100% average on their homework and didn't even come close to passing the test. They didn't even make half the score they needed to pass the tests. What's this tell me? Somehow they're not doing the work. Because if you do the work and make hundreds in all your homework, you're not going to fail the test bad. Okay. Now I understand that with pressures and you're under pressure to perform and you're under pressure to get this course out of the way so you go on and so forth. People will take shortcuts. Don't do that. Don't do it in pre-calculus. Don't do it in this course. Now, if you're in my pre-calculus course, then I'm going to see your work on a daily basis. And you're going to have to perform on a daily basis because in my pre-calculus, you have a quiz first thing you come in every day, just like you do in this course. A quiz on what you did on homework. So I'll be able to tell real quick, this is a really tough assignment. You made 100, but you can't do the first thing. Okay, I don't penalize you for that. You're penalizing yourself. Okay, because you're not learning the material, and 90% of your grades are dang tests. Okay, in my course, maybe 85%. Okay, so maybe you spot yourself 10 or 15% of the course by having a good grade on the homework. Of course, quizzes are involved in that. And if you can't do the quizzes, well, you spot yourself less than 10%. Which means if you fail all the tests, you're not going to pass anyway, unless you're real close to the passing level. Okay, makes sense? You don't learn by letting ChatGPT do your homework for you, or by letting Wolfram do your homework, or whatever resources are out there. Okay, there are probably resources out there where you can look up all the solutions to most of the problems in Open Math, which is where we do the homework. Okay, you do that. And it looks like some people are doing something very much like one of those things. people have a tendency to do that to get the homework out of the way. You do the homework to learn the materials, okay? And you come to class to learn the material. If you're in the distance course, you follow these videos and do exactly what we do in class. Okay? Now, if you find that you can learn it some other way, that's okay, as long as you're learning it. I'm not real big on, you have to learn it the way I say. Okay, if you can learn it by letting ChatGPT somehow tutor you, or actually I saw something on Khan Academy, there was Sal Khan did a TED talk where he's talking about how they're using AI already to create an online tutor that looks pretty darn good. I'm going to give you information in it, okay? But I haven't gotten into it to be sure that I really think it's a good idea. I'll let you decide whether it's a good idea. It's great stuff. It's the way he presented it. And I've been watching Sal Khan since he emerged, okay? Since his work on this stuff emerged, and I think he's really good. Anyhow, so there are options, okay? And we have tutoring services over the tutor center, and even online tutoring services, okay? Brainfuse and stuff like that. So you have plenty of options for help, okay? And I'll be helping you in class. It's a small class. I can focus on what individuals need, except we got to keep pace. Okay. So with all that, I'm going to pause the video for a second and let you ask if you have any questions. Anytime you do have a question, you should, and you want me, and I'm not available in class or whatever. You can email me. I stay on the computer pretty much all day. And sometimes I have something to do. I got into a plumbing job over Christmas. I don't even want to describe that to you. Simple job. 15 trips to the, you know, swapping out a shower upstairs. Got it in. I've got some pretty bad tendonitis in this elbow. It's a little hard. It was doing solvent welds. It's a little hard to get the welds right. I got it in. I decided I don't like it. It's on the second floor. We had a second floor leak, about $20,000 worth. Insurance company paid it, then they canceled me. And it was because of some incompetent plumbers came in and didn't tighten something down, which is why I do my own plumbing now. But anyhow, I decided to redo it, and then I did a couple extra things, and then I finally got it about right. And the downstairs shower blew out. Yeah. Anyhow, it was an adventure. It's a lot like trying to do a math test. Okay. You get something done, you're not sure it's right, you go back and do it again. Another thing, my tests, both in my class and in here, are on time. You stay on there all day if you want. Okay. And some people do. It's disturbing. Because the tests are designed for, you know, regular tests are designed for an hour, hour and a half, and people will take 6 hours. Okay. Finals are designed for 2.5 hours, and you know, people stay in there all week or something. Well, you know, and then we'll talk a little bit about test taking strategy and pick the low hanging fruit first. You know, read the test, decide, okay, I'm going to pick on this problem, this problem, this problem, because I know how to do them. Okay. I'm going to start this one, but I'm going to let that percolate a little bit when I get stuck. And I'm going to go on to this. You make all kinds of decisions when you take a test. Make good decisions. Okay, well, we'll talk about that later. Now, what we're going to do now is I'm just going to give you a few simple problems. Start with arithmetic, go through a little bit of elementary algebra, a little intermediate algebra. One other thing in this course, we concentrate on the algebra that you're most going to need in the pre-calculus course. Okay. And there's some algebra topics that we really ought to cover for an intermediate algebra that aren't as important as other topics in pre-calculus. And if the class is not moving as quickly as we like, then sometimes those topics become optional. Okay. You should really do them whether they're optional or not. But we prioritize the things you need for your pre-calculus. And we try to do that in time that you have the skills you need when you encounter them in your pre-calculus class. Okay. If you're in my pre-calculus class, you'll get them plenty early. If you're in other ones, might only be a day or two early, but at least you'll have exposure so that when you're in that class, you'll understand better what you're seeing and you'll learn it better. Okay. And you'll be halfway there if you've done the job. Maybe you'll be all the way there if you've done a really good job. Okay. Maybe you sit there sleeping in your pre-calculus class. Well, that'd probably offend your instructor, so don't do that. Pretend to be awake and alert, even if you know everything. You won't know everything. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put a couple problems on the board, ask you to solve them. And if you're a distant student at this point, well, yeah, the video is going to just blip and the problems will be there. Okay. The next time I turn it on, unless somebody has a question, you'll see the problems. And then I expect you to do the problems because I'm going to stop the video then. And I'm going to circulate around and see how people are doing the problems. Okay. And if you're a distant student, well, you do the problems, then I'll come back and I'll explain them. Don't be passive if you're a distant student, or if you're watching this video. If you miss class, you're watching the video, you just sit back in your television mode and don't learn anything. You got to be active, you've got to be engaged. So when I say do something, by doggone, do it before you see the solution. If you get a little stuck, well, give yourself a reasonable amount of time. Most of the problems, I'm going to give you 5 minutes or so. If you're a distant student, take 5 minutes. If you can't do anything in 5 minutes, well, then you probably ought to watch what I can do. Okay. You're not going to have time to go out and research it. But it's something that theoretically you should be able to do at this point, whatever point we are in the course. That makes sense? Okay, that's the approach that we're going to try to use here. Okay, I lied. The problems aren't there yet. And try not to lie to you too often, but I got to keep you in your toes one way or the other. Okay. So another thing that I strongly recommend is that you have a dedicated notebook for this course. And you bring that to class. And if I ask you to do some of these problems, you do them. Okay. Now in class, and this is addressed to the in-class students, it doesn't apply to distant students, you'll have quizzes. Distant students get to see the quizzes too, but I can't grade them. Okay. So there'll be other things that fill in that gap in your homework participation and quiz grade. And that'll be mostly your homework. In class, I've got 8.5 by 11 paper, blank paper that I can feed into the copier. I can't feed your notebook paper into the copier. It damages the copier ultimately, and pretty soon it stops even working. Okay. And if it isn't full size. So if it's a quiz, you're going to put your name on it first thing. Okay. You're going to do your work on it. And then you're going to give it to them. All right. I do recommend, if you want to refer back to what you have in your quiz, most of you have smartphones. You can download a scanner app and scan it before you hand it in. So you have it right there on your phone. Okay. All right. Well, okay, that some of that wasn't relative to distant students, but almost everything else is. So I'm going to get people started on this, and we're going to see the problems. Okay, now I was going to write more problems in this, and I decided when I got in the middle of this, now let's see how people do with just these basic fractions. See what people remember about fractions. Typically, people are pretty challenged when it comes to 5th grade arithmetic on fractions. Okay. I've got a grandson who'll be in 5th grade next year. He's a pretty good math student. But we'll see how that works out. Because what happens is after you learn how to actually do some arithmetic, they put a calculator in your hand and you never do arithmetic again. It's not a good thing. because I see how it handicaps people when they get to college. So anyhow, we gotta relearn fifth grade arithmetic if necessary. You learned it when you were 10 years old, you can learn it now. Okay, and you can learn it quickly now because your brain is much more developed, even though the calculator is probably handicapped it a little bit. Okay. So there's a variety of responses here. Some people get some of them right, but nobody's getting them all right at this point. Didn't give you enough time to do that. But let's go over the rules here. How do you multiply fractions? Well, the rule is you multiply the numerators and you multiply the denominators. So now, if you kind of knew that but weren't sure about it, you probably really should have written it down. Show me what you're thinking, even if it's wrong, then I can address whatever is wrong. Don't be afraid to make a mistake because I'm going to give you many, many opportunities to make a mistake in this course. The course will give you many opportunities. Okay, so you're going to tend to make some mistakes. That's not a problem, but if you make mistakes, you got to fix it. Okay, so that means, and when you write this out, write it out so you show me what the rule is. Here's the rule. It's 2 times 5 divided by 3 times 4, which is 10 divided by 12, which reduces to 5/6. I mean, hopefully you know how to reduce a fraction. I'm not going to go over that right now. Okay. If you do this much, I'm happy if you can get 10/12 because it's easy to take that next step. At least I want you to know the rule for multiplying fractions because that's going to be very important later on. Adding fractions, which is much harder than multiplying fractions. Okay. Now, some people want to do 2 plus 3 over 3 plus 4 because they're confusing it with this rule because they haven't done fractions in 10 years. Okay. That's not the rule. I can reduce that rule to absurdity. 2/3 is more than a half. Okay. In other words, if you divide something into 3 parts and take 2 of them, it's more than half of what you started with. 3/4 is even closer. It's even more than 2/3. If you divide something into 4 pieces and take 3 of them, you're only missing that one. It's more than a half. So when you add these numbers, it's got to be more than 1. This is more than a half. This is more than a half. You got to get more than 1. Well, if I add 2 and 3, I get 5. 3 and 4 gives me 7, so I get 5/7. It's still less than 1. It's ridiculous. Okay, to add numerators and add denominators, don't take offense, but in a sense, it's absurd to do that because it almost never gives you the right answer. It gives you ridiculous answers. So you want to kind of maybe be aware of that, but basically make sure you understand that if you add 2 fractions, you got to find a common denominator, unless they have a common denominator. You're going to have assignments Monday on fractions. We get to drill this, then I'm going to test you on it Monday, Tuesday. Okay. Okay. So anyhow, your common denominator is 12. It's a common multiple of 3 and 4. You multiply 3 by 4, I get 12. So there's something I can multiply by 3 to get 12, and that's 4. There's something I can multiply 4 by to get 12, and that's 3. So what I do is I say, okay, this is 2/3 times 4 over 4. Now I can multiply by 4 over 4 without changing the value of the fraction because 4 over 4 is just 1. If you multiply by 1, I don't change the number. I just change the form of the number. Okay. And then 3/4. Multiply that by 3 over 3. Now 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 3 is 12. Okay. Now I said a lot there. If you're watching the video and didn't pick up everything I said kind of fast there, something you were taught years ago. Okay, you stop that video and get my words. Maybe YouTube will give you a decent transcript where you can even read what I said. But I find that 3 or 4 years ago, YouTube was giving great transcripts. They did great translations. Now, for some reason, they're just awful. You can't understand. You can't even relate what the transcript says to what I said. It used to be pretty good. I mean, very good even. And now with all the AI, you would think, so I don't know what's going on out there. I mean, this is Google, you know, they're a leader in AI. I don't think they're quite caught up to open AI, but you know, they're still one of the world leaders, one of the three big ones. You'd think they'd apply AI because, you know, the parent company Google is the one that owns YouTube. Where does that come from? I don't know. Okay, so anyhow, now we know how to multiply fractions. We multiply numerators and multiply denominators. We get 8/12 plus 9/12. Now, of course, you might have a tendency to want to reduce 8/12. Well, it reduces to 2/3, and we change this thing to 8/12 so we could add them. Okay, so we leave it this way. Now, how many 12s do I have here? I've got 8 of them. How many 12s do I have here? I've got 9 of them. If I've got 8 of something and then I've got 9 of something, that means I've got 17 of that thing. If I did my arithmetic right, 8 and 9 is 17, right? 8 and 10 is 18, 9 is 1 less and all that stuff. Okay, so I get 17/12, and that doesn't reduce. Now, I said a lot here. I said everything you need to know in order to add fractions. And I said it very concisely. If you want a longer explanation, well, OpenMath is going to give you a longer explanation. You can look up how to add fractions on the internet and get more answers than there are human beings in the universe. Okay. And some of them are pretty good. And the ones that come up first in your search engine are probably pretty good. Okay. And it goes with how many people tend to use this video. Sometimes people want to use the stuff that really sucks, but you know, because it seems easier, it's appealing or something. But usually, the top video is going to give you pretty good information. Okay, 2/3 divided by 7/4 is what? Two-thirds times 4/7. When you divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. Now, I do love to go into detail about fundamentally why this is true, but there's the rule. And that's how we're going to have time for today. That's 8/21. And that doesn't reduce because these things don't have common factors. Okay. Now, 2/3 cubed. What does that mean? Well, that means 2 cubed over 3 cubed. And 2 cubed means 2 times 2 times 2. 3 cubed means 3 times 3 times 3. And that's easy arithmetic. It's 8/21. That's 27. I saw the 21 there and I wanted to write 21 here. Well, you know, I've been getting a lot of sleep lately, so I'm probably not going to make as many of those mistakes as I usually do. But you'll see me do stuff like that, so keep an eye on it. Okay, so anyhow, there we have it. That's fractions. That's the first thing you've got to know about fractions. You'll be tested on that, quizzed on that when you come in. If you're a distance student, of course, you're not going to be quizzed, but you better take the quiz yourself and see how you did. And don't let Google or anybody tell you how to do the quiz. Do it yourself. Okay? And see how you did. Nobody but you's going to know. Unless you did great and want to brag about it, I'll be glad to hear you brag. Okay. Okay. Here are 3 basic elementary algebra problems. And I want you to work these as best you can. And then we'll see how you do. If you're a distance student, remember this is where you pause the video and take at least 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes to do some work. Engage yourself so you understand what it is I say afterwards, or so you demonstrate to yourself that you know how to do these. Okay, now I see people doing things with these equations, mostly without showing the steps. Okay, if you don't show the steps, tells me two things. Yeah, it could tell me three things. One is if your answers are always right, it says that you know the steps and you can do them in your head. Okay, very few people coming into pre-calculus can even do these problems in their heads. And matter of fact, most people coming into pre-calculus can't do all these problems. This is very fundamental pre-algebra. Okay, so you have a task before you. And pre-calculus students have the same task before them, which is to learn pre-algebra, elementary algebra, and intermediate algebra, which is 3 years in the schools in one semester. So you have to be prepared to work hard. I'm not trying to scare you away. People can do it. Okay, people come into this course, and if they work hard, they get it. You've seen most of this stuff. Now, if it turns out you haven't seen most of this stuff, you probably ought to consider going back to the MDE 60 course, which is the intermediate algebra course. Okay, because we cover intermediate, elementary and intermediate algebra. Means you couldn't take pre-calculus. It probably wouldn't fit your schedule. So yeah, you probably don't want to do that, but in some cases, it's the best step. Now, if it comes back to you, yeah, if you're just rusty, comes back to you, you're going to be fine. Okay, so you don't know yet. But anyhow, that's our case. Okay, we got 2x equals 14. You only have basically two rules. There are a couple more, but they're two most basic rules when you're dealing with equations. You can multiply both sides by the same quantity, or divide, which is the same thing as multiplying. Okay, or you can add same thing to both sides, and of course you can add a negative number, and that's the same as subtracting. So some people want to make that into 4 rules, especially when you're teaching people whose brains haven't totally developed yet. And I mean like people who 12, 13 years old, they don't have mature brains yet. So you got to maybe make that 4 rules. You can add the same thing, you can subtract the same thing, you can multiply by the same thing, you can divide by the same thing. It's really 2 rules. Add or subtract, multiply or divide. Okay, and you don't even necessarily have to do it that way. We won't worry too much about that, as long as you understand those are the basic things. Now there's also the distributive law, which is okay, but that's not something we do to both sides. Now we can raise both sides to the same power, but that comes later, and that's easy enough to accommodate when we need it. Okay, 2x equals 14. What do we do to both sides? We divide both sides by 2. 2x divided by 2 equals 14 divided by 2. So we get x equals 7. And then we check it. We take the x equals 7 and we plug it back in for x. And that gives us 2 times 7 equals 14, which gives us 14 equals 14. And now we know we did it right. If you skip the check, you're going to continue to do the same thing over and over, and it's going to be wrong, and you're never going to fix it. If you check and you get it wrong, then you're going to have to go back and think, and you're going to figure out for yourself that I did something wrong here. And maybe you even figure out what it was and why it's wrong. You got to check. And that's another thing. You really want to get my words here. Okay? Or somebody else's words that are telling you the same thing. And you're going to have trouble finding anybody who tells you what I just told you. Okay? Okay. Now here, you have x minus 3 equals 9. We want to get x, which means we don't want that negative 3 there, so we add 3. And if we add 3 to one side, we add 3 to the other side. Now, some people want to put 3 equals 3 down here and add the 2 equations. I don't encourage that, although I don't count it as wrong, because I find that leads people to doing some really bad things. Okay. But if you do it right and understand it, then I welcome it. I prefer that you write things out linearly. Anyhow, Minus 3 and 3 adds up to 0. That leaves us x minus 3 is 12. And then we check. Plug 12 back in here. And we get 12 minus 3 equals 9. And 12 minus 3 is 9. So that checks. Okay. Now here's another one. 3 times the quantity x plus 4 equals 21. Well, we do the distributive law. This 3 times x plus 4 means the 3 multiplies x and the 3 multiplies 4. So we get 3x plus 3 times 4 equals 21. And some people like to do this sort of thing and this sort of thing. I'm kind of okay with that. But you really want to understand just that this multiplies through everything, and everything in parentheses has to be multiplied by this thing. Okay? And this helps you learn it. I used it when I was in high school. Okay? And I'm still relatively sane. Okay, so anyway, you get this. And then that gives you 3x plus 12 equals 21. And then what do? Well, you can now, if you want to isolate x, you could divide both sides by 3. And this would divide by 3, and the 12 would be divided by 3, and the 21 would be divided by 3. That would be okay, except most people skip part of that. A lot of people won't divide the 12 by 3. So I don't recommend that you do division until you've done all the addition and subtraction that you can. Addition and subtraction before multiplication and division, just like in the order of operations. That sort of applies when you're solving equations. So we do 3x plus 12 equals 21. And now what do? The easiest thing and the least confusing thing to do is subtract 12 from both sides. Do the addition and subtraction before you do multiplication or division. And that leaves you with 3x equals 9. And even though you can pretty much look at that and say, what would I multiply by 3 to get 9? Well, you multiply by 3. Yeah, that's an easy way to get the answer, but it doesn't reinforce the process. To reinforce the process, you write out every step. Say, okay, 3x divided by 3 equals 9 divided by 3. And 3 divided by 3 is 1. That leaves us x equals 3. There's a little more to that. But so now we bring this up, we plug in for x. We come down here and we get 3 times 3 plus 4 equals 21. I'll write that 3 in a different color just so you understand where it came from. So that's 3 times 7 equals 21. That's a bad looking 7. And 21 equals 21, and that checks. Now again, to summarize, we write out explicitly every possible step that we can write out because we get used to the steps. Because people came in here, nobody got all these right. Some people got most of them, some people had trouble even getting started, okay? That's okay, that's what we expect at this point of the course. But you got to fix that, and you'll have an assignment for Tuesday where you solve some simple linear equations, okay? And that's pretty fundamental. There's other stuff we need to know that we didn't get to go over today because we're 20 minutes short in time. Okay? Because, I'm not arguing against the decisions that have been made because of the weather. Some of the roads out there are still pretty much, at least some of the driveways are pretty much impassable. But the snow schedule thing, kind of short to fit everything. I want you to understand every detail of everything I did here. Okay? You got plenty of time, you got 5 days, get it done. All right? It's foundational. This stuff you have to do in pre-calculus. If you're not in my class, you got to do much harder stuff than this on the first day. Okay, if you're in my class, you got a little bit of time because I start my classes out with some simple pictures. You construct pictures and then we relate everything in the course to those pictures. That has the effect of compressing everything in the course into shorter time, but you've got a picture of what it means. And that worked out pretty well last semester. You don't start off basing my course on a whole lot of algebra. We learn the algebra. Well, here's your first step in learning the algebra and then doing the assignment that you'll have for next time. Okay? So that's where we are. We're actually going to stop on time today. I don't know how that happened. I'll try to fix it later. But we've only got 5 minutes till the next class comes in. Until you've got to be to your next class, so feel free to go, but wait until the video stops if you're going to walk in front of the camera.